evening, folks, and welcome to the Square D, the Jack the Ripper of GAA Analytics. My name is Connor Galvin, and I'm joined, as ever, by the king, the professor himself, and founder of GAA Pro Stats, Mr. Stephen O'Mara. Stephen, how's she cutting this even?
Mighty, back from a rainy week, camping in Meath and celebrating the great Halton Cup success up in Oldcastle. So happy to be back on dry land again.
You made it back from a waterlogged campsite up in Oldcastle. You got it handed to you all right. Our Mead brethren be dining out in the Charlton Cup for weeks on end, no doubt. Colin O'Rourke called it one of the greatest things he was ever involved in. God bless him. But we're not here to gloat, obviously, as much as we love the Mead folk. We're here to really, we had a feast of football the weekend. I know our hurling brethren, look down their noses sometimes at the lack of quality and epic football encounters. This weekend was truly epic, wasn't it? It was as electrifying a weekend as football as ever has been, wasn't it?
I don't know what I go that far. I think a lot of it is context that, I think it was the RF Galway podcast, I think, which is half crack and half trying to talk about the football, made a very valid point earlier in the year that, you don't have to justify getting 15 behind the ball the same you did a few years ago. I think in the context, I think if these games were played 10 years ago, the doom and gloom merchants would have complained that they were dull and drab. Dublin Monaghan was dull and drab to the last 10 minutes. And Kerry, Derry, by context, obviously the first 5 minutes was loose, but, wasn't... it was exciting in terms of contests. It was fine. But I don't know what to say. It's all relative to the context. We've got used to those sort of Dublin Roscommon, Galway Roscommon, Derry Donegal kind of games. In that context, they were both more exciting than normal. But I don't know what to put them down in the Dublin Kerry 2013 bracket now.
Well, look, I mean, the intelligentsia of modern day football, like those who really follow the game, who realise in advance of Dublin, Monaghan had to hit somewhere around 60 phases in the full match to beat Dublin. Right, they had to keep the phase level down. They had to keep it slow. They had to keep it ponderous, or they'd be dead as fried chicken. Right, that's a fact. That was the objective. Anyone who went to see the gunfight at the OK Corral is codding themselves. Right, doesn't exist. It's gone. Those days are finished. Right,
absolutely. And we earmark that, and those people who understand that, they're all watching the Square D anyway. So we don't need to convince them.
We're preaching to converted. Speaking of the converted, just in case there's a few of the great unwashed tuning in for the first time here tonight.
God bless them.
You're gonna love this Moneyball extravaganza that's coming your way, which is exactly why cutting edge software from GAA Pro Stats in live game time is what can win and lose a match. Right, we're starting with Derry and Kerry. This one was, I think we discussed earlier on. I mean, unlike Dubs and Monaghan, there was 17, 18 more phases in the game itself, right? There was huge scoring. I mean, there was a thunderbolt of Derry scoring the first half. Give us an overview of what happened here. Like this was an extraordinary game.
Yeah, and look, I have finally got the programmer to get me just to the kind of the Moneyball element in real time, which I often have to go back and do after the game for some of it. And we will come to that. But we're going to start, I suppose, with the old reliable here. And I suppose, look, we have to look at this game in two phases. Get this up here. We obviously have to look at this game the first 64 minutes and the last 6 plus 4 injury time. And I suppose what's probably fascinating is that at this stage, it's 112 to 114 to Derry. And expected score is close enough. It's 14.8 to Kerry, 16 to Derry. So Derry had shot, as we'll see. It was intriguing. Derry shot well above expected score in the first half. We can see there, it should be bang on level at half time, but they were 3 points up. Whereas in the second half, up to, what are we at, 64-minute point, whereas Kerry had actually outscored them by a point in that half. They should have outscored them by a point the other way. So all things being equal, it kind of did balance out that Derry deserved to be 1 point up on expected score, but we're actually 2 points up. What's intriguing is, and we talked about that 4.4 points per 10 phase average in the championship this year. And if you look at at 64 minutes, total score, expected score per 10 phases, Kerry 42, Derry 44, total score, Kerry 4.3, Derry 4.7. So suppose you had by far and away the best offense all year, 5.7 points per 10 phases coming into this game.
Yeah.
They played a lot of Ulster teams who had poor defensive records. Kerry's offensive figures hadn't been that outlandish, but their defensive figures had been poor against some of the better teams. So you just saw it evened out, which I suppose all things being equal, you should see the All-Ireland semi-final even things out because you've got theoretically two of the best four teams. So that was fascinating in itself. I suppose what's notable, obviously, here is by the 70th minute, it's 116-14 to Kerry. And at that stage, I suppose, even before Derry went to game-chasing country, they've got shots off in 58% of phases. So I think we have to give some credit to Kerry because Derry's offence had been so, and I've been highly critical of elements of Kerry's defence, and we'll go through them. But, to bring that Derry offence from 5.7 scores per 10 phases is an absolute outlier. To bring it down to a total score of 4.5 and an expected score of 4.2, that is noteworthy.
Yeah, and did Derry change anything in this match?
No, I mean, I happen to
this rhetoric that all of a sudden Derek threw, like they said, listen, lads, we're just going to give it a go. Like, I mean, is it lazy journalism, lazy commentary? The fact that people say, wasn't it great just to see the Derry lads playing off the cuff? This is absolute horse manure, the highest grade, isn't it?
I'd like to put it a bit more diplomatically, but as you asked the question, the answer would be yes. The first 4 minutes were quite random, and it maybe gave the perception of first impressions, as they say, and for the first four, Derry won the kick out. They got a man-on-man attack straight away. It ended up out over the side, and they had to kick it in. It gives the impression there, but they had to kick it in because they couldn't go short. Kerry went up, kicked one away, if I remember correctly. One or two turnovers then and long kickouts one resulted in quick phases. But when we look at it forensically, did Derry do anything different from their slow build-up play the majority of the time and dropping off when the other team had the ball the majority of the time? No. When we look at this, it is a kick out, I think, in maybe the 4th minute. Their first hands of ball, if I'm not mistaken. And we see here, Kerry, we'll see, did sort of go man-on-man, which we'll look at in a minute. But in terms of did Derry throw caution to win and just go at it, we'll see here. They've got an extra man at the back in the orange oval. Everybody else is accounted for. We can see that the matchups. But Kerry have obviously planned from the off here. We're going to go man-on-man in their half at least, because you can see the man stepping up. Now, straight away, I'm looking at this thinking, if Derry are saying, let's go at it, the obvious thing here is the Junior B standard 12-yard hand pass to Conor Glass, who's in loads of space. You could actually, Jesus, we get half a yard of them here while this Kerry man is coming in the way to try and press up. But do they do that? No, they do what Derry do, and they go back to the keeper. They could have launched a quick man-on-man offense from the 45, handy ball out to Glass, and they didn't. So and that led to the goal, which we'll look at forensically in a minute. Here we are early on. Now, Derry pressed the kick out, and they always press the kick out. So you'll see here they're more or less man-on-man. I don't think there's even much of his own element in it, apart from one of the fielders you can barely see there. But everyone else is man-on-man. But again, Kerry, good kick out. Shane Ryan, probably, I think, one of the understated high-end keepers in the country. I'd have him certainly in the top 4, if not in the top 2, potentially. But picks out a really good kick out. But again, Derry press this, it's a real shot to nothing press. It's like, we'll give a quick go at the press here in the corner, but we're not throwing caution to the wind, because again, Shane McGuigan could press up on the yellow oval here, but he doesn't. So this
Yeah.
notion that Derry, and we see here, where's the ball get hand passed? To Shane McGuigan's man who's just dropped off, turned his arse to the ball and gone back behind the ball. And we see here when Kerry get the ball to the Derry 65, what do we see? Every Derry man is behind the ball, and Kerry have no option but to go backwards. So the notion that Derry just threw caution to the wind and this and had a crack at it,
Yeah.
it's forensically void. Derry did what Derry always do, and then in elements adapted to what Kerry did, which was somewhat different to what Kerry normally do.
Yeah, and I mean, in terms of what Kerry normally do, right? I mean, this is an extraordinary championship because we both admitted, like, I mean, you were looking at Kerry this year, a lot of shadow boxing going on. Mayo went down and ransacked them down in Killarney. They kind of vomited through the group stages. Next thing, they got into a real game, and here they are now in the fun. But now we've seen, right, their true colours, but they've played their way into playing their best football incrementally. Did Kerry change? Now, obviously, they started off, you know, um, with a great joie de vivre. They thought that the world was their rise. Go up man to man. Next thing, boom, goal went in. Did that change things?
Yeah, again, I think the key point here, and I suppose I'd like to say we were the first ones to call it here. I broke down forensically a few plays where Armagh maybe got their numbers wrong or went on a bit of a gambly press and ended up making Derry play man on man by accident or design. And actually, Derry didn't do particularly well against Armagh when they played man on man. And I did a forensic piece on that. And Monaghan came out against Derry, having been battered in Ulster 121 to 110, played man on man and drew with them. Now, I would have said, yeah, if I was a Kerry, I would have said what they said. Yeah, let's try and press these lads man on man. Let's try and make this into as close as we can to an old school, okay, at the gun corral, as you would say, gunfight. The problem is, and this is why it's not that easy, that's all very well and good if the keeper sitting back inside the 21. But you'll see here, they did try to go man on man up the field, and you'll see it here. There's a couple of examples, but if I'm not mistaken, this one leads to the goal. But you'll see here they're trying to go man on man. You see all the tags, but the issue here is obviously Oran Lynch is coming out. This is why playing Derry, they're so forensic, they're so methodical, and they bring 15 players into the attack. You can't just go man on man because at some stage you still have to split a man somewhere if Oran Lynch is coming in. Now, what's really notable here, and you'll see it here. Sorry, this isn't the goal. You see it here. They go man on man. There's no sweeper there. Definitely, that was the intention from the get-go. And they get their 2v1 rule right because no one comes out too high on Oran Lynch, and they exert pressure, which is what they've been doing, make a turnover. Really good early on. And again, that was one of the ones that maybe gave the impression that Derry were doing something they weren't doing because Kerry turned them over a few times early on with that aggressive man-on-man play. Again, we'll see here, and this leads on to a bigger point we'll look at later on. With Kerry going man-on-man, it did open up a little bit more to tempt Derry into kicking it in man-on-man, which, as we'll see, ultimately is probably what cost the game. But you'll see here again, it's not a sweeper cuts this out. It's a man who cheats off his man, i.e., I'm marking my man, but I'm keeping a really vulture-like eye for a ball that gets played in, I can cut it out, and that's what they do. But if we look here, this is the goal, and this is maybe the third phase where it could be a classic zonal defence situation. You'll see here the two ovals. Those Kerry boys are staying with their man. Now, one of my marquee videos in kind of coaching circles is not unlike this, but it's a million miles apart as well. When Rory Lavelle comes out in Tralee against Kerry in the 2018 league, and Kerry were so determined to go man on man against Dublin. That's what they were planning for. Rory Lavelle strolled over the halfway line and tapped the ball in front of Damien Comer. I suspect if he kept going, he could have kicked the point. But obviously, Kerry have decided we're doing this with a point. But obviously, as the phase moves forward, we're going to do something different. Now, I spoke about the Paddy Tally element. You see everyone's man on man. They look to pounce at a moment of weakness, a loopy hand pass, a ropey solo, or what you presume they've earmarked here as a weak link. He's not an outfield county player. And you see the Kerry defender here looks to dart out and take him. See that? This is what I say. This is what you tell an under 10 not to do. But obviously, we're
Yeah.
eons ahead of that. It's not under 10 stuff. It's taught out. But the
Now,
risk
this happened a
reward of
few
this is, and
times. This happened a
this
few
is what
times in the
Kerry
first
do.
half.
I spotted this first when Tally came in against Dublin in the National League last year. Centre forwards seeing a weakness at corner back and trying to a centre forward leaving the centre back to double up on a corner forward 30 yards away.
This is like the kind of shooters. Like this is more akin to your rugby union, where your shooter comes out of the back line to basically annihilate the guy. But if he misses him, you're stone dead. This sort of shooter system they have. This is like, this is Russian roulette.
Ultimately,
this is why I think against Dublin, they keep doing this against Dublin, and they'll be dead as fried chicken.
I agree, and we'll look at that. We'll have a preview show early in the week of the All-Ireland final, quite possibly. But in terms of this game, I'm going to show this goal. But ultimately, Kerry's defensive figures were good, so we have to say there was value in this. And they won it All-Ireland playing like this. But what you do notice, it is, I wouldn't say Russian roulette, but it's up in the stakes. But if it's done correctly and coached correctly, and it clearly has been, you get value. And Kerry's figures, ultimately, which we'll divulge into, do stack up. But we'll see the run is made. But the problem is, Oren Lynch maybe isn't the weak link they think he is. And there you've essentially got your 2v1 rule wrong, or you've gambled on your 2v1 rule. Derry man's in the back, and literally from that point where they broke that line to try and get the weak link, Derry have an overlap. Now again, right corner back here, and there will be some compliments coming for the Kerry full back line, which have been scarce from me this year, but this is the same as the Dublin goal in the replay in 19. Corner back angles and lines are wrong, that he doesn't actually see that there's a more dangerous man running through. His back is to the play, which it shouldn't be. He's about 20 to 30 degrees off. It should be shoulder to the ball. Doesn't see it. Ultimately, the point about that is the structure that Kerry went man on man. They more to go man on man. They tried to press out. It was a gamble. It backfired. Goal. Now, what's notable is that put a bit of manners on them, because you see the next phase here, we see Tadhg Morley, and again I want to make the point, Tadhg Morley I think is probably, and Keane O'Sullivan was the GOAT on this. I would say Morley maybe reads this better than O'Sullivan did. He is an exceptional sweeping from six sweeper or centre back, and we'll see here very quickly. You have the two. Now I will give the credit that this chopped and changed for the rest of the game, and maybe he's smart. He is a highly smart player and reader of the game. Maybe he's read that there's two Derry boys here and I'm going to be goosed anyway, so I might as well contract the line and get back. But broadly speaking, after that goal, we did see a lot more of this. It wasn't just strictly man on man. You see Morley arse to the ball. He got back into sweep. A Derry man followed him in. But watch here in the circle. Watch what happens as the Derry man steps out. Does Morley follow him? Is this a rigid man-on-man defense? No, it's not. Maybe it's because they conceded the goal. Maybe they reverted to type. Maybe they plan to mix and match it as Morley saw it anyway. I don't know. But again, as the ball is played here, what have we got? It's a classic sweeper. So, and what's really notable here, to give that context, this is the first of, I suppose, the new Moneyball features coming up live in real time. Again, this is the first 63 minutes. Derry have scored 112. They've scored 43% into a blanket defence or a +1 defence. 48%. Kerry have scored 35%. But to give it its due, this is where you have expected score live in a single game. Good and bad shooting can swing it radically. But the expected score, Kerry are 42% into the blanket, Derry are 43%. So as I predicted in the pre-game stats based on the figures I had, there was no reason to expect Kerry to be that far better than Derry. Hence, I said I marginally favoured Derry if I had to call it. Ultimately, they had a draw game in terms of blanket defence football.
Yeah, extraordinary stuff. I mean, one thing you mentioned there about the Kerry full back line about being complimentary. I think when Jason Foley kicked that random wide in the second half, you were kind of going, I don't think the Kerry full back line will be the one that's been mentioned at the end of this game. But winners write the history. moving on from the evolution, right, of the blankets that you had there, one of the most compelling live features of the GA Pro Stats during the match was what you unearthed on the real money ball feature. Will you elaborate for us, right? Derry, right? Ball through hands, kicking ball in. Give us a numbers on this, right? This is really compelling stuff.
Yeah, and I suppose look, this is sort of what the programmer's been promising me all year. I finally have it, and to have this in real time, it is a game changer, I suppose, in terms of my live analytics and what the software can deliver. And this pattern was established fairly early on, and I'm going to show it to you. But before I do, there's this perception in football that man on man and quick transition is always the best option if it's on. It's always the best option for the Dublins and the Kerrys against everybody else. It's not always the best option for the weaker team. This hit me in the face watching Kildare and Meath against Dublin in 2017 when they were mad to get the ball from end to end. But what I found was that when they were getting 3v3s, they were up against athletically superior defenders, and they were actually scoring more into blanket defences. Now, this isn't exactly the same thing, but if we get this up here, what you'll often find when a Derry lose a game like this, what you'll often find is like, if they'd gone for it more, if they'd thrown off the shackles or whatnot, we're now putting the analytical science to that. And what we see here, and again, this is up to 64 minutes when Derry were winning the game, and we're very close to kind of having the game in one hand. What we're going to see here is that from Derry's 114, they've kept the ball through, and by through the hands, I mean passive, like that first play where they could have gone flat to the mat going forward. The opportunity was there, but they went back sideward, slow process, chess play. The play that I think Malik O'Rourke's Monaghan were the first masters of. Jimmy McGuinness's Donegal were a precursor to that. But we look here, they've scored, the bottom half is Derry through the hands, 28 phases through the hands, 113 scored. 57%. There we are. There's Derry, 5.7 points per 10 phases. That's bang on their season average when they play pure process football against Kerry. But if we look at what happens when they make a moderate forward pass or an aggressive forward pass, it says kick pass. That should be in brackets because it's generally kick passes, but doesn't explicitly have to be. What do we see from the four moderate forward passes or kick passes? 1 point out of 4. The aggressive ones, 0 out of 4. So they've got 1 out of 8 when they've tried to play that more fluid traditional football. And for me, what's got Derry where they are is that key process football. On 8 phases, they were tempted away from it, and they got 1 point out of 8, 27%. And that, 1 point out of 8, 12.5% expected score of 27%. And ultimately, if we look, we'll see. And this one wasn't that early stage where it looked like Derry went at it. They got, by accident or design, a few situations arose where you say, you have to kick it, and I'm probably the only guy in the country who says no, depending on the caliber of the opposition, the caliber of you, maybe just play chess against Kerry. And here's Ethan Doherty. There was a turnover, sees the man-on-man down the line. What's he do? Goes for it. It's every footballer's instinct. Jason Foley, who haven't been too complimentary on his individual defending skills all year, credit Kerry, won a number of this. He comes out, wins this one. Here we are, Conor Glass, again, technically one of the best footballers in the country. But again, I'm at the stage, I'm reading my software live here during this game. This is the second half. I'm saying we're scoring 5.7 points per 10 phases where we keep it slow. Well, unless there's an overlap. Don't be tempted into that man-on-man kick pass forward. Glass, obviously a quality footballer. It's in his nature. Sees a man-on-man, goes for it. What happens? Out over the sideline. Here we are again. This was a funny one. We saw one earlier on another piece. Here's McFall. Now this one, McGuigan, again, you talk about the instinct of the footballer. He's actually got a mark. It's an 85-90% shot here from McGuigan. He's got the mark. It's 113 to 112 on 54 minutes. Just take the mark. And as what the point I would make about some of these is JJ Okocha, the man who hit the bar 17 times in one season, but didn't score any goals. The crowd loved him. He got Supporters Player of the Year. This is a no-brainer. Stop and take the mark. But again, that poacher's instinct will go for the goal, hands it off. We're dealing with three top-class players here. McFall to McGuigan to McKinless, the three of them probably be in any team in the country or nearly any team in the country. But the key point is maybe it's a JJ Okocha. Maybe it'll be better off. Process till you get your chance and credit where it's due with a brilliant backdoor cut made. I think it's the cornerback. The man marking is brilliant and it's cut out. So it wasn't just about the initial pass not being delivered. It's about maybe setting up JJ Okochas down the road that look exciting, but ultimately don't have the value. And ultimately, when we look at that game, we say that if Derry had kept those balls through the hand and they conceded 2 or 3 on those 8 turnovers, you'd have to expect they'd have been 3 or 4 or 5 up at that stage on 64 minutes.
Yeah, and it really is extraordinary from a Derry point of view. I mean, like, you're probably looking at about 5 Derry lads who have a serious 5 or 6 Derry lads who are nearly nailed on all-stars. I mean, unless, like, obviously the finals coming, something to explode. But, like, I mean, let's say even young player of the year. I mean, Owen McAvoy at full back is powerful. I mean,
phenomenal.
This guy is phenomenal. Right, you Chrissy McCaig, right? Obviously, look, tough day at the up, but I mean, his overall presence. McKinless, McGrogan, the 2 lads in midfield, Glass, Rogers, McGuigan up front, Ethan Doherty. Like, there's some phenomenal. Like, Derry have some absolute box office players on their team, nonetheless. The interesting thing was, like, look at, as Babs Keating would say, donkeys don't win derbies. They have a few lads, they mightn't be donkeys, but next door neighbour.
No, they're saying no donkeys, but no, they got 5 or 6 high-end technical players. Whereas Kerry have 14 of them,
They do. Yeah, no doubt about it. Unlike, I mean, Monaghan obviously had to keep the phase count down. You're basically looking at this going, Derry should have taken Monaghan's approach for longer against Kerry, prolonged the phases, they would have beaten Kerry.
Well, again, the likelihood, you can't say they would have because you don't know what would have happened. But based on the figures I'm looking at, if every Derry phase was kept passive, through the hands, processed, based on the data that was there on 64 minutes, you could have expected to have scored 5.7 points per 10 phases, not 4.5. And that, I have to go back on my figures how many phases there were, but that would have been maybe 2 points more. It also would have been 2 points less on turnovers. Now there's employed stuff with kickouts to come anyway, but probably you'd expect that 2 points up they were. Probably would have been 5 at a quick mathematical guesstimation. Counterintuitive, that kick passes on, you want to play it. But the data is saying there that Derry needed to be more Derry. And they probably have won that game.
And Kerry, similar to Dublin, the bomb squad came off the bench. Unbelievable impacts. Like O'Brien came in, Tony Brosnan came in. Powerhouses like Legs Galore, Michael Burns came in. That level of energy, similarly to what Dublin could bring off, and like Kerry, I suppose, strangled them like an anaconda in those last few championship minutes, didn't they?
Yeah, I suppose. Look, it was intriguing in the way it went because, look, we'll have a look at it at the end. Stephen O'Brien was clearly fouled. Sure, some refs wouldn't have given it, and I think if that free hadn't been given, Derry had hands on ball 64 minutes. They cut to Jack O'Connor 30 seconds earlier. He looked like a worried man. If that free isn't given, it's probably an 85-15 game for Derry at that stage. They've got hands on ball. They'll probably keep it, suck Kerry out. Gets turned over, small margins. I suppose the key is there's Kerry's kickouts again up to the 64th minute. There's Derry's, and what's notable, not a single one of those was won on the break. They were all hands on ball kickouts, even even the 2 or 3 kind of out to the midfield, the green ones, they just lost one. I suppose what was intriguing was, and it's the randomness of it, the real cynics or clinical cynics will create it. But I often say this to guys, forwards want to get their score. I always say to a guy, if you're inside 25, 30 yards and you get an advantage, just stop running, make the ref give you the free, because there's more value in scoring from a dead ball than from play. Why? Because you can set up and you can press the kick. And if O'Brien hadn't been fouled and he went in and tapped that ball over the bar, Derry still would have got hands on ball on the turnover.
Just to clarify on that, if a guy actually gets an advantage and stops running, it's a foul ball. The free goes out. It's actually a 5-second advantage. Yeah.
But I would have assumed
this is one of the less well known.
No, but the point is, if he stops running within 5 seconds, he has more advantage getting the free than stopping.
Cannot fail the ball. Cannot fail the ball. But so a player he gets 5 seconds to score. If he gets shot off in 5 seconds, misses, you bring it back. If he double hops the ball within that 5 seconds, the same. It's a free out.
I wasn't aware.
One for the coaches out there. One for the coaches out there.
Well, then, fair enough. Just kick it wide then, because the point is,
yes.
If that's the rule, it's a bananas rule. But fair enough. I wasn't aware of that. You're the referee. I'm not. But the point is, if O'Brien goes through there and hand pass the ball over the bar, the chances are Derry get the kick out off and they hand the ball again. But because it was a dead ball, they pressed and they won the next 3. Now, I suppose what's noteworthy here is that is the press on 114 to 113. That's the press. What I find notable, and again we go back to the stats, and I don't have the piece up, but up to this point, Derry had scored 110 from 20 hands on ball kickouts. Again, when you break it down mathematically, I would be saying from 10 minutes in, if that's the way the figures are going, it's got to be a 14, even 15-man press. Even if you know you're conceding a goal every 4 or 5 kickouts, if you're winning every second one, there's value in it compared to letting them get hands on ball all the time. So I think it asks questions here, why Kerry didn't press this aggressively earlier on, but ultimately that's what killed them late on, is the fact that they did force them long. They scored 2 off 3 that they won long. It wasn't the only reason, but I will say again, and for all that, probably, when you compare to the Cluxtons, even maybe the Shane Ryans, Niall Morgan definitely throws the shapes here and clips that to the left corner back.
So if you look at that picture, right, if you look at that freeze frame you have there, right in the centre half position, I'm not sure if that's McKinless or McGrogan.
Run away.
Yeah, that pass is definitely on. Like, there's a clear line of sight.
Look, that was a lot easier to see from up here. And
of course it is. Yeah.
But for me, the one I'd always coach keepers, emphasize the short clip with your focus. And if it's not on at the last second, know what your backdoor option is out the field. But what you see here is what most keepers do is they're looking outfield and inside is the backdoor option, and it shouldn't be. Not when you're scoring 110 from 13 or 110 from 20 hands on ball kick out. I'm only saying, now very few keepers would hit this, but we're talking about the best of the best. Stephen Cluxton hits that. And there's men who won All-Stars ahead. There's men who won All-Stars ahead of him that lost All-Ireland finals in that kick out. We see this next kick out, Derry a 4v3 in her. And I always say, if you've got 4v3, it's 5v4, 6v5, but it's 4v3 right to the right of the D. Man inside there nearest the keeper. I suppose maybe it's that experience, and that's what the ice cool lads do. But we see the Derry man there right on the D. That's, I say it again, that's how Cara Finn beat Guidor in the All-Ireland semi-final. Guidor were winning an astronomical amount of opposition kickouts off high presses, but it was there. The data was, the analysis was there, that they were kind of cheating the edge of the D the whole time. And Bernie Power spent 3 weeks practicing left-footed clips, and it won that All-Ireland semi-final. You see here, that's got to be hit to the D. And what's worse is, because now the principle there is that the Kerry man who's cheating is out under the break, and when it's competed in the air, he's the one who he's the one who wins it,
And let's push on, right, to our
Yeah.
your great friend David Clifford.
Yeah.
Hell of a day at the office. Another nailed on all star across the board. This guy is invincible. He's lauded the country over as the one man wrecking machine, the guy who's going to single handedly drown the Dubs out in the deeper water. What you make of his display on yesterday?
Credit where it's due. I mean, I'm quite critical of David Clifford's decision making in general. I don't have any doubts about his technical ability. It's a decision making, but he had an excellent game. He had an exceptional first half, and even taking in a decent second half, it averaged out as a very good game. And credit where it's due. In the first half, he had 7 significant plays, and he scored 5 points. And when they scored, he was fouled for his own freeze. I don't count his. I always credit the guy who was fouled for the free. He was fouled for his own freeze. Now, listen, he had 2 of these. And again, if I'm critical of David Clifford, it's for these kind of shots. But he has the capacity to hit them, and he hit the first one. But this, Chrissy McKay, you see where he is there, blocking hands. You see how far out he is. Just to give you a bit of an expected score context, for an average Division 1 inter-county footballer, that's a 30% shot. And Clifford hit 2 of them. Now, for Clifford, it's probably a 45, maybe 50% shot. But again, when you hit too many of these, it comes down to the laws of random probability or balance, whether they go over or not. If you're a 50% shooter, they go over 50 times out of 100, but some days they might go over 7 out of 10, some days 3 out of 10. That's maybe the question mark I would have about him. But what I actually felt was he played the game that could make him the player everybody talks about, because there was 3 or 4 occasions where I think frequently, like here, it's 66 minutes, they're a point down. And this for me is a David Clifford that everybody imagines exists all the time, but doesn't. But it did, savagely so, in this game. He's come in, he's looking around him already. Now, his awareness is brilliant, but what I would typically expect of Clifford here is he'll put the burners on, he'll put the weight on the right foot, cut back out and hit a 30% shot off his left foot. And that's where he has his bad games. And they're too frequent. But he didn't do it. He only did it twice in this game. And he may have felt they were, that's my dad. He may have felt they were better than 50% chances. But watch what he does. He throws the shape as though he's going back out the way to cut it on his left. And maybe he would have, only McKay is preparing for that. But what does he do? Dare I say it? Does the Conor O'Callaghan thing. He drops the shoulder and he goes and he draws the foul. And he drew 4 or 5 frees. And crucially as well, it would be easy to avoid this, but this is what he doesn't do enough of. And I think this is actually, with all his array of skills, this is the skill that can be his number one skill. His number one output from the skill. Brilliant, classic Kerry crossfield ball put in, where you can see there's 4 Derry men trying to get back to double, triple, quadruple, or quintuple up on him, which whatever they can manage. Does he take the shot on? No. This is, and even the day was against Galway where the stats were really poor. He gave 4 assists by just doing this. What does he do? The threat of Clifford drags in extra defenders, just slips it out, and he gives a secondary assist. But for me, the man who made that score, I could have possibly come in there and had now 50, probably an 85% for the Kerry man. I could have come in there and had a 50% myself. But Clifford has created that, even though he's 2 touches back.
Shawnee O'Shea is the man on the end of that who, like, if you look at his kicking technique in that last shot, right, it's actually quite noteworthy. Look at exactly where his standing leg is versus his kicking leg. I don't know if you can get that shot up there again. It's technique wise, right? Look at exactly the body position as Shawnee O'Shea strikes through that ball.
Oh, yeah, it's brilliant. Look,
this,
it's brilliant. And I'm not saying it's a gimme. It's far from a gimme. Don't get me wrong. But I still maintain O'Shea is the best footballer in Kerry. I still maintain, we'll talk about this next week. But the point I'm making is that it's Clifford makes this. It's made. That's where that score is made. And that's
Yeah.
Clifford doing what he has the highest talent in the country to do. Maybe the closest after that are the Canavans and maybe Ian Burke. But Clifford has the highest ability to do this if he does it. And the last day, notwithstanding the fact that McKay fouled him a lot where he might have hit low percentage shots, that did help the performance. But ultimately, if I was the Kerry coach, that's the image I'd be sending to David Clifford and saying, that's how you win 6, 7, 8 All-Irelands by playing that when it's on.
And last word on this, Joe McQuillan. A few words on him.
Look, it was the big talking point, and we don't generally get into much refereeing here unless it's a conceptual thing, but one of these is a conceptual thing, and I tried to Google this later. You might be able to inform me. Now, first of all, Stephen O'Brien, this is a foul. Let's look. McKinless is off his feet. He's going the opposite way. He's not going to reach the ball there unless he has arms like your man from Street Fighter 2, Dal Sim. You can see there, you can't see, but he's pulled him and he's knocked him off balance. Like it's a foul. It's a foul all day long. The two that are, this one is Derry a point down on 69 and a half minutes, I think. You can even see here O'Shea is swinging out of him, but I don't know how that cannot be a free. He's looking right at him. He's come in with a closed fist. It's gone under his elbow. How that's not a free, I don't know. But the big one here, and I don't want to get into a big debate on this because we're gone 5 minutes over what we said we do with this already. I actually tried to Google this. It was before the midnight oil here. I couldn't find the new rule, but I am very confident that the rule states, and it's certainly how it was applied when Tyrone got a black card and Donegal got a penalty in 2020, the Derry man is through on goal here, and he's fouled. I'm very confident this should be, by the letter of the law, a black card and a penalty. It's more so than the one Kerry got against Cork, and we're at the semi-final of the All-Ireland here. There has to be a consistency on this. And if Derry get the penalty, then a black card there, if they score the penalty, it's game over. And in case I get arguments on this, these rules by the GAA are rarely correctly worded. You could argue Morley's going to get across. But if Morley gets across, there's another overlap.
Yeah, just for clarification, I mean, it's basically like inside the opposing 20-meter line. If a player is brought down on a black card, clear goal and scoring opportunity, irrespective if it's outside, right, the large square, it is a penalty and a black card issued. So you're 100% correct. So there is no grey area to this. This is black and white intercounty. It doesn't apply to club, so that's irrelevant. But at intercounty, right, that is exactly what the ruling is. So there is no grey area. If that is deemed a black card offence,
different rules for club and county. But again, I'll take your word for it. But but ultimately,
this came up. This came up in the Cork.
This needs to be clarified.
This
was the game-changing rule in soccer in 1991 or 1992. We brought it into Gaelic football. I appreciate the one about the sideways hand pass was taken seriously for 6 months and forgotten, but this is too big to get wrong in an All-Ireland semi-final. And as I say, I tried to Google the rule and I couldn't find it because I kept finding pre-2020 rules and I hadn't the time. But the point I'm making is somebody's wrong. Either the guy who gave Donegal the penalty against Tyrone in 2020 or this guy here, one of them's wrong. And at that level,
the more high-profile one was this year with David Goff at Cork and Kerry.
Yeah.
When there was
but the principle was right. I would argue your man wasn't through on goal because he was going to get closed off. You could argue there that he's not through on goal, that he could get closed off. But if we look at it again, the point I'm making, in the absence of correct wording that would need to be worded correctly. So interpretation, and I want to give this no more than 45 seconds. Interpretation A, he's through on goal, he's a clear line to goal. Interpretation B, Morley could choke him off, but that's overridden by the fact that McGuigan is coming off the shoulder, and if Morley leaves his man, there's a hand pass to the back door. For me, that, assuming I understand the rule correctly and how it was applied in Enniskillen between Donegal and Tyrone in 2020, that's a penalty, and that's Derry robbed of a place in an All-Ireland final.
Yeah, look, at closing note on that, it was applied this year, Cork versus Kerry. Sean Powder brought down Gainey outside the large square, right, black card offence. Goff awarded a penalty. All hell broke loose. But Goff is actually correct. We're moving on to Saturday's action in Croker, right? Dublin and Monaghan.